If you've only ever been exposed to Strahd's 5th edition material, then there's still a lot you don't know about him, Barovia, and Ravenloft in general. I have spent years steeped in Ravenloft lore, so let me shed some light on the shadowy corners of Strahd's dark world. But before I get into that, be sure to click the subscribe button down below. Also, this video is brought to you by my own book, Libris Nocturnum, but more on that later. If you hadn't guessed from his sizable lapels, Strahd was born back in the 70s. He made his public debut in 1983, but for 5 years prior to that, his creators, Tracy and Laura Hickman, were using him to terrorize their friends every Halloween. These Halloween sessions served as playtests for what would eventually become one of the most popular D&D adventure modules in history, and that is I6 Ravenloft. In the original module, players were drawn to the village of Barovia by a forged letter. There, they learn the truth of their predicament, meet Irina Kolyana, get a Taraka reading from Madame Ava, and then go to Castle Ravenloft to find the items of power and kill Count Strahd von Zarovich. If that sounds even vaguely familiar, that's because not a lot has changed in the adventure's central themes and ideas over the past 40 years. Despite all of those similarities, there is one major difference between Strahd's 1st edition debut and his latest 5th edition adventure, and that is length. The original adventure module was only 32 pages long and could be played in an evening. Compare that to the 256-page long Curse of Strahd, which typically takes a whole year to complete. Did you know that there was a direct sequel to the original Ravenloft adventure module? Well, if not, don't feel bad, because it's pretty much gotten the Highlander 2 treatment in that it's been shoved into a dark corner, removed from canon, and everybody's tried their best to forget about it. I-10, the house on Griffin Hill, takes place in the town of Mordenshire, where Strahd returns as the Creature, who is the evil half of a good version of Strahd called the Alchemist. You see, bad Strahd has stolen good Strahd's toy called the Apparatus and is using it to swap the minds of villagers with monsters from out on the moors. So instead of Bram Stoker's Dracula, we've got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with a side of Freaky Friday. Several other Ravenloft mainstays were introduced in Griffin Hill, notably the Weathermay family and the Lich Azzel and Rex. But beyond just a few of those tidbits, this adventure module has been forgotten by nearly everybody, which is kind of a shame. If they hadn't retconned player victories in I6 Ravenloft into "it was all a dream" and hadn't tried to shoehorn Strahd von Zarovich into the whole thing, well, then the house on Griffin Hill would probably be remembered a lot more fondly. But as it is, it's not something that I would recommend anybody really go out and play. Before we move on, I need to thank our video sponsor, me, and my book, Libris Nocturnum. This 364-page tome contains an anthology of 13 adventures that cover everything from level 0 survivors of a zombie apocalypse to level 12 heroes stuck in an Eldritch Horrors alternate dimension. For over 2 years, I have worked with a lot of very talented writers to make this book a reality, and now it's finally here. Or at least this advanced preview copy is. You can order your copy over on BackerKit and reserve it for the August delivery date, or you can order a PDF version on my website and drivethroughrpg.com right now. So pick up your copy today using the links down below. That all being said, let's get on with our list, shall we? By the way, this is my new dog. His name is Finn. He's a pain in the butt. A cute one, though. The year 1990 saw the release of one of TSR's most influential products, the Realm of Terror box set. It was with this release that Barovia became much more than just the name of a little village. It became the name of the demiplane of dread we all know and love. Additionally, it got neighbors in the form of other demiplanes, and they all made up the continent of the Core. Realm of Terror solidified Ravenloft as a proper campaign setting with its own rules, creatures, lore, and a wide cast of characters. It was followed up in 1994 with The Red Box, which was an update to Ravenloft for 2nd edition. Owners of the Red Box found changes to Ravenloft lore with events such as the Grand Conjunction, reshaping the land considerably. It had new characters, updated characters, combined domains, and a whole lot more. It was a big deal. Moving forward in time, the mid-1990s saw a slew of Dungeons & Dragons games come to market. I even had a few of them on my computer at home when I was a kid. I didn't know anything about D&D and I didn't know how to play the darn games, so I got really frustrated and left them alone, but I had them. But one that I did not have was 1994's Ravenloft, Strahd's Possession. A year later, there was another game called Ravenloft Stone Prophet that tossed players into the land of Harakir, and it didn't feature Strahd at all, so who cares? Finally, in 1996, players were taken back to Barovia in Iron and Blood Warriors of Ravenloft, which was a 3D fighting game for both the PC and PlayStation. It was not well received at all, and it ended up being the last Ravenloft video game for nearly 20 years until the release of the Ravenloft expansion for Neverwinter Online. That expansion let you and your friends explore the village of Barovia and take on Strahd together, and it gave us this wonderfully animated trailer that I love. In 2010, Strahd got his own board game, creatively titled Castle Ravenloft Board Game. This game allows players to work through several written scenarios on a modular map of Castle Ravenloft's underbelly. Here, they encounter various monsters, collect treasure, and work towards preset goals. I got it for Christmas this past year, but I haven't actually played it yet, so I can't really say if it's really good or not, but it looks like a lot of fun. I will say though, it comes with some pretty cool minis, like this Dracolich right here. Really nifty. Prior to its appearance in 5th edition's Curse of Strahd campaign, the demiplane of Barovia was a lot bigger. Several towns were removed in 5th edition ostensibly to keep the adventure's focus narrowed down to what was important. Looking back at previous editions, however, we can see that in addition to Krezk, Vallaki, and the village of Barovia, the lands of Barovia also contain the towns Hosla, Immen, Korfberg, Oresno, Teufeldorf, and Zeidenberg. You can still find Oris now in the Adventurers League content for 5th edition, but all the other ones have been officially discarded. In Curse of Strahd, player characters are supported by the Keepers of the Feather, an underground network of were-raven spies. The Keepers predate the campaign though, and were actually introduced back in 1997 in the Domains of Dread book for 2nd edition. Back then they were called the Keepers of the Black Feather, and their membership was actually mostly made up of normal Barovians who were just sick and tired of Strahd's shenanigans. It was only the leadership that were were-ravens. One of those was Bray Martikovo, if that sounds familiar, who let the organization meet in secret in his tavern's basement. That tavern was the Blood of the Vine Tavern in the village of Barovia. Oh, how times change. In Curse of Strahd, there are 2 sites of standing stones, or megaliths, as they're called. There's a set outside of Old Bone Grinder and a set outside of Berez. The book doesn't detail the purpose of either of them. Instead, it gives just little details of strange carvings, of lost cities and whatnot that the GM is supposed to weave into some grand mystery or just ignore entirely. The standing stones date back to the 1st edition days and were originally introduced in the novel Vampire of the Mists by P.N. Elrod. Oh yeah, there were novels, more on that in a second. Even then, the standing stones were mysterious in their origin, but they served a purpose by creating an area of hallowed ground into which no undead creature, Strahd included, could venture. This was backed up in 3rd edition when the standing stones were mentioned again in the Ravenloft Gazetteer, Volume 1. Between 1991 and 2008, by my count, there were 22 published novels set in the Ravenloft universe. Author P.N. Elrod kicked things off with the very first novel, Vampire of the Mists, which detailed how an ironically named vampire, Jander Sunstar, found himself in the land of Barovia. There he came across a newly undead Strahd von Zarovich who took all the knowledge that he could from the Elder Vampire. Strahd then betrayed Jander and proceeded to get his ass kicked after Jander discovered the holy symbol of Ravenkind around the neck of a zombie who happened to be Sergei von Zarovich. After that book, Strahd made 2 appearances as a novel's protagonist in I, Strahd, Memoirs of a Vampire and I, Strahd, The War Against Azalin. Both are absolutely worth a read, and I can honestly say that Memoirs of a Vampire is legitimately a good book. With over 3 decades of history, there are a lot of secrets to uncover about Strahd and the Ravenloft campaign setting. I would love to hear your bits of trivia. Leave a comment down below with an interesting forgotten fact or a favorite aspect of a previous edition or whatever. But before you do that, absolutely be sure to click like and subscribe, and maybe even check out some of the other videos right here.